Super excited about today's discussion because our panel member, I've been good friends with her since I've been in this business for 35 years. She's just written an amazing book with tons of resources on topics that we talk about on this platform on a regular basis. And we've got her today to really do some um, oh, come on. Really have a great conversation. So let me welcome Deb to the Miller to the stage here. And as we do on these discussions, hey Deb, great seeing you.
Hey, Steve,
Okay,
you're making us feel really old when you say 35 years.
that's okay. I
But
mean,
it's okay because that's where we are. Yeah.
yeah. So but Deb, before we dive into your book, let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about your career and what led you to writing the book, Doing the Right Thing.
Well, that started back long time ago. I had responsibility for making the decisions about my parents, my in-laws, and two sets of aunts and uncles that didn't have any children. And I was the dutiful daughter. If you've ever read the book Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter by Simone de Beauvoir, you'll know what I mean. But I've always been interested in houses and real estate, and my father was in commercial real estate and kind of got the bug. But I bought my first home to renovate in the late 70s. I paid $43,000 for it at 9% interest. And I thought, how am I ever going to get this done? But then after I finished renovating it and got all these offers for it, it was addicted. So I kept doing that. And then when my mom became ill with cancer, I knew I was traveling with the National Association of Home Builders at the time, and I was an executive director for one of their committees. And I knew that I couldn't be traveling as much and still help taking care of her. So I decided to stay at home, and I had to have something to do all day. So I got my license in real estate and started the idea of, after I was going through this with all these people, I said, wait a minute, there is a need other baby boomers are going to have for how do you put all this together? So that's when I got licensed, and I decided that I would just help seniors and adult children either sell the family home or help them age in place safely. And that's what I've been doing. And one thing led to another. And here I am 30 years later. And I wrote a book because I wanted other adult children. Think about it. You've got a job, you've got a career, you've got kids, you got to take them places, and you just don't have your sandwich generation person. And all of a sudden, you get a phone call saying your mom fell in the tub or dad had a heart attack. What do you do? How do you know what to do? And the book literally helps you through that whole process. And I put down everything that I wish I had known back then in the book so that it would help others. But and I was very surprised because I thought, oh, well, I'll just write it, I'll just write a book. And everybody says, oh my gosh, I wish I had this when my mom was bad or whatever. And so I'm glad I did it, but it's surprise. I'm happy that it's helpful. But at any rate, then after about 9 years ago, my husband became ill with cancer. And he was told, oh, we can do surgery. Well, he endured 12 hours of surgery. It was a very rare type of cancer. And I remember sitting in the hospital waiting room for 12 hours waiting for him to get out. And they said, oh, no problem. We got it all. It's great. He's a textbook case. And then the cancer came back. It was cancer of the appendix. And there were very few doctors who knew about it. And they came back and he got very ill, and they said, we're sorry, but you won't last. And so he passed away
Wow,
in December. Next month, it'll be 9 years.
man.
And
Well,
then I had to go out on my own and be
yeah,
solo.
yeah. Let me I'm glad you're sharing your personal story because before we dive into the book, I wanted to learn more about that and thank you for being so transparent and sharing that
Sure.
with your now after his procedure. Was there a period of where you were caring for him either
Oh, constant, yeah.
How long of a period was that?
Uh, I'm trying to remember. It was at least, well, he went very quickly. He was, I would say 3 to 4, maybe 5 months at the most.
Okay. All right. So this was,
Yeah,
uh,
it was a very quick,
and was,
the cancer ate him up.
were you caring for him in your home or was he in a rehab center?
Well, the same year that he was diagnosed, I decided one day I woke up and I said, you know what? We ought to sell the house and then we can decide where we want to retire to. And he said, oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea. So we sold the house. Fortunately, that was in May, but by August and September, he was starting to show these signs of the cancer. So I had found a 3-bedroom apartment that we could rent that was convenient. And we moved in there, and that's where he became really ill. But fortunately, I didn't have to deal with the house. We had already made that decision. However, my husband, being the collector, accumulator, I call him, not a hoarder, but an accumulator, he had saved all his Lincoln Logs from his childhood, you know, every toy known to man, his drum sets. He had 2 drum sets. It was and he was, well, if we're going to Florida, I'm going to take everything with me. And I was getting rid of stuff right and left because I didn't want to have to pay a mover. But at any rate, he became ill very quickly after the first round of surgery. And he was in hospice, and fortunately he was able to pass away at the apartment. But he passed. He was told, you can decide, we will connect you, because he couldn't eat anything. We will connect you and then we'll disconnect you, and you know you have 10 days until you pass. And so he was able to sort of say, well, I want to have one last Thanksgiving with the family. And so we had the Thanksgiving, and then he passed in December. And yeah, it was tough, but we got through it, and he's
Wow.
not coming back, and now he doesn't have cancer. So I'm happy about that.
Well, so, man, we haven't even started talking about the book yet, which we'll probably dive into some of these topics, but I love personal stories
Well,
and
it's not easy to go through this for
no,
anybody. And
and
I'm thankful. He always said, "Oh, I'm going to live until I'm in my 90s." And I said, "Well, not married to me, you're not, because you're too hard to get along with." But at any rate, he
well,
fortunately he went fast.
now, like, and you've got adult children who have their own lives.
Right,
Now you're on your own.
right.
You're tell us just a little bit about the grieving process and kind of what
Well,
happened next.
my husband was a software engineer, so he was very organized as far as making lists of things, which helped me. You know, he told me, well, you got to call Social Security and do this and do that. And he had a master list. But there was so much that he didn't know to tell me that I found out after the fact. And I had to work through it myself. And I said, okay, I'm going to remember this and then whatever. But uh, we just, you just go through, everyone grieves differently, Steve. And
Hmm.
don't let anybody tell you how long your grief should last. I knew that if I didn't get back into working again, I was going to go crazy, because I like having things to do. So of course I found a house, and right after he passed in December, and we had his celebration of service in February, and at the end of February I had bought another house to renovate, so I can't stay away from it.
So,
And
okay, so you sold the family home, you
right,
moved into a 3-bedroom apartment, and then you
right.
went and bought another home. And
And yeah, I like fixer-uppers. I like
okay,
restoring houses to their original beauty, so to
well,
speak. But
that's so having purpose when we go through
right,
these life transitions is very important,
exactly.
even if it might seem to somebody on the outside is, boy, that's wacky, Deb. I mean,
I
why?
know. And
Yeah, okay.
well, I am wacky, and that's my calling. I love making something right again, and it gave me an opportunity to work through the grief.
Hmm.
And the first time I went to a movie by myself, I thought, okay, is everybody gonna look at me? What am I doing here? And then I went to dinner by myself, and I said, it's really nice. I can stay as long as I want, if I want to have another drink, if I want to, whatever. And I travel solo. I love to travel, and I go by myself. And, you have to work up the gumption, but you can't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Just get in there and do it. Do one little thing every day. to get yourself out of and I mean, I still miss my husband, but I'm really enjoying being able to make decisions on my own. I can go as long as I want to travel. If I want to go here, there, if I want to go to dinner at my favorite restaurant, I can do that. But it takes time. And
Mhm.
don't let anybody tell you how long you should be finished now. You'll get better. It'll be done. You don't know that.
Man, well, I can see you're getting some really positive reactions from the
Oh,
audience on that. And would you, I mean, solo aging is our number one topic on this platform. Would you, even though you've got adult children and you've got a network around you, would you identify yourself as a solo ager?
absolutely. In fact, I have made sure that I have my personal resources already set up so that I've got everything in a trust. I've got everything organized. I have someone who I know will come in. I've already lined up the people who are going to come in and sell all my possessions if the time comes. So I've thought of all the things in my book that I need to do and I've done them. But I'm always reviewing things because things change.
Yeah.
And my thing is I leave instructions because you never know when you're going to be in an accident and killed immediately or get run over by a truck, or you never know.
Yeah,
And
none of us have a crystal
I
ball.
don't want to make it a burden for people who are left behind.
Okay, now I promise folks we're going to get to the book here in a moment, but the reason that the last thing that I want to dive into that I learned about you, Deb, is that like you now live in a 55 plus community.
I
And
do.
so you basically, you remodeled the home, you fixed it
Well,
up and sold it and
I sold it because I said, okay, I don't want to take care of a half acre of land and the leaves and all the gutters and all the stuff. And I had done, and quite frankly, once I get done with a house, I get bored and I'm looking for something else to do. So I said, okay, now's the time to sell the house. And I've rented a place close by and stayed there while I looked around. And I made a list of what I did want, how I wanted to live, ideally, and what I didn't want. And that led me to, and of course, I have a lot of built construction experience, so I knew what questions to ask, but I made a list of where would I like to live. And I knew I wanted to stay in the area. I wasn't going to move out of the state.
that's the
But
DC metro area. Okay,
correct.
got
Yes,
it.
I'm in Virginia and I wanted to stay there. I'm a third generation Arlingtonian, but I can't, there's nothing much in Arlington except a condo. And I wanted to have the camaraderie of the 55 plus generation around me. There's social activities and things like that for me to do. But so I narrowed it down and then I found the exact location that I wanted, but they were under construction. So I stayed in the rental until the construction was done and I bought brand new because I told myself, if I'm going in, I deal with a lot of hoarders and dying and people who have died. And I say, well, if I have to go in their house all day and clean out stuff, I want to come home to something that's nice and I don't have to think about what I have to do to it. So I bought and I've been very happy. I did buy a condo. They have villas and single family, but I didn't want to look at a blade of grass. I wanted somebody else to deal with that because it gives me more free time. And so I bought a condo. I bought on the second floor for a reason. And, just all the things that I wanted, I was able to get. And they tried to convince me to move into the other building because they were trying to fill it up. I said, no, because I want this, this, and this. I wanted a garage in a certain location. All the things I wanted, I got.
Wow. Okay.
And so here I am.
This is very intentional. Now, before we dive into the book, I have another question that I want to ask you, and that is, the whole landscape of options that are out there, and I love the fact that you went from your home
Right,
to a rental,
right,
but so that you could live in a condo-like environment. Some
exactly.
people can't handle that, but
No,
then you chose a 55 plus community, which is different than a life plan or a continuing care community.
exactly.
Did you explore that as an option for
I
yourself?
did. And while there are several out there that I really loved, I just liked the concept of the active adult community. I don't like everything about it. No, nothing is going to be perfect. But I made the decision to move into this type of living arrangement. And so far I've loved it. And I know at some point I may have to move into assisted living, and that's down the road. It's not today, not tomorrow, but maybe soon. I don't know.
But well,
But for right now, I'm living my life.
and you're brave enough to talk about it. Okay. Woo, boy, that's great. But honestly, I'm glad we had that conversation because it really, your personal journey, you're not just an author sort of talking to us about a checklist of things that you know and have
I've done
done.
them. I've
You're
done it.
you've
Yeah.
done it. And folks, I will drop in the link on Amazon to Deb's book, but let me take a peek at the table of contents here. And folks, there's so much in this book. I'm just going to scroll through this table of contents. Just look at all of these topics that she dives into, everything from cruising the seas to selling as is to remodeling and where to donate and give away things. This is every single one of these topics, and some that I haven't even imagined are things that come up in our conversations. So hats off to you in creating what is a very comprehensive book. But sometimes, Deb, I go through people's table of contents. Yours is so extensive. The way that I want to start our conversation, and I hope our audience jumps in, is give me a few things, like a few tips in your book, things that you talk about and that you've observed that we can walk away with and say, gosh, I was on this discussion today and I got a few good tips. Like, what are some of the things do you find yourself telling a lot of people?
Well, if you're an adult child like I was, and I created the book table of contents in the organization because the likelihood of you needing the entire book all at once is remote. So I've divided it up into questions that come up frequently from my clients about how do I do this? What do I do about that? But I would say, don't be afraid to start the conversation with your loved one. And it won't be the first conversation that you resolve everything. It takes time. This is not something, this is a life-changing event, and you don't rush into it. It takes time. And if your parent is thinking about it, or your loved one is thinking about, oh my gosh, I have to do the whole thing. No, break it down into small steps and ask the right questions and get the answers that you need. There are resources out there to help you, but don't be, it's to educate and inform and empower you to be an advocate for your loved one is the book. The book has stuff that I wish I knew then, but now I know it. And there's a very simple chart to help you decide, should I keep this? Should I throw it away? Should I donate it? How do I get rid of stuff? There are questions to ask an assisted living facility, questions to ask estate sale people, so that you don't get taken advantage of and that you are better informed to make the decisions, because everyone is going to have a different set of decisions. Your mom may say, well, I want to stay where I am. And someone else says, I want to get rid of it. I don't want to have to do any cooking. I want the CCRC or the life care situation. And that all those decisions are great.
All right.
But it's not something that you can do in a day or a week or a visit.
Okay. Um, Sue has a really good question for us to dive into. And
Okay.
Sue, I'm glad you brought this up because it seems to be a common theme. And basically, what she is saying is that I've got some financial resources and knowledge, and I'm outgoing to find answers, but I know that the rental market has gone up so much that I'm better just staying in my own home. I
Yeah.
also have friends to help me, but I'm concerned that others who can't move or don't know what to do, who are not good at adjusting to new places,
All right.
that they've moved to. And so, Sue, there's a couple of themes here that I think we should talk about, Deb, and I'm interested in your feedback. Affordability is one,
Exactly. What is
is
the
like,
budget? Yeah.
how do we get creative with the budget that we've got? And
Mhm.
then adapting to change and some, like I'm glad we told your personal story
Well,
because
but when you've been in your house for 30 or 40 years, you don't know that there's a whole nother way of doing things outside of your front door. And that to me is an overwhelming feeling to not know. And then you have to figure out, well, how do I get there? I might want to do that, but what do I have to do to get there? Because it just is overwhelming. And if you've been collecting things for 30 or 40 years, it's not going to be easy. And you have to know your budget.
yeah. So, and then like, one of the things in the conversations that we've had related to affordability, Sue, that I want to bring up is there's a bunch of trends that are out there that are saving people money. First is home sharing,
Right.
um,
Yeah, I have a section on the Golden Girls, live like the Golden Girls. I
yeah.
think that's a great idea. If you can find a home that is adapted for aging in place, I think it's a great solution.
And then the other, I saw one of your chapters is on the village movement and neighborhood villages, which
Staying where you are and have a village
but
concept.
but the overarching umbrella of the village is it's it's creating surrounding ourselves with a community who we're willing to help them if they need help and they are willing to help us. And again, as you just said, Deb, we go through life and we might not need that much help at various stages in our life, but then the time comes
It
and we're sort
happens.
of
Yeah.
like, who's
Mhm.
here?
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Um, let's see. Okay. So, have the conversation. I'm glad that you made that sort of the first topic.
And
What,
a lot of times the adult child, for example, is afraid. They don't know how to approach it, but then they don't think about the fact that maybe their loved one is also wondering it, but doesn't know how to approach the subject. So, at the holidays, if you go visit family, that's a good time to maybe bring it up. And if the adult child is on site at the home, they can see, how do your parents function? Are they doing okay? Or, are they having trouble? And are there people that you could bring in to help them? Or should they literally get rid of the steps? If they fall down the steps, what happens? Things like that. And there are things that they can do to make the home safer.
okay. And well, because you adapted a home, and I imagine you applied some of these principles to that project that you took on after your
Yep,
husband passed. What are some of the easy ways that we can make our homes more safe and accessible that I think a lot of times people get scared because they think they're going to
absolutely.
turn it into an institution.
No. One of the biggest problems I've found is that much of the house, and I did a podcast on this, uh, much of the housing that has been built already uh, is not aging in place friendly. The hallways are too narrow. The bathrooms don't accommodate a wheelchair or even a walker or a care provider to go with you to the bathroom, use the facilities. So that's a hard thing. Some of the easy things to do are get rid of the clutter and create a space where you can move easily without being in fear of tripping and falling. Accommodations in the kitchen and the bath. One of the best things that people told me was get a 19-inch tall toilet with a heated seat and a bidet. I mean, your life will change, trust me. But things that you can do, don't have scatter rugs. Those are tripping things. Get rid of the clutter, as I said. A lot of the clutter can be trash. Well, throw it away. You're not going to need it, but you need to do that. And don't keep things. A lot of the hoarders I work with have things stacked up against the windows and the doors. So in case of fire, they would be trapped. Make sure that those access ways are available easily. And pick things up off the floor. Don't leave your clothes lying on the floor. It's simple housekeeping kinds of things. And deep
Yeah,
clean. I
I,
mean, I've had people who didn't know the window was open in the basement and the water came in a rainstorm and then the mold grew and went into the ductwork and they got sick. And, things like can exacerbate when there's a lot of deferred maintenance issues that I run into. And it's good to take care of those things while you still can. Because if
Um,
you don't make the decision, someone else will if you become incapacitated. And you may not like where they send you.
okay. Cheryl says, where I live, we created a neighborhood village, but now we realize that our homes are not necessarily feasible for all of us to live in and
Right,
survive in, such as sets of steps for a
right.
3 to 4 tier townhouse. Can
Yeah.
you make suggestions? Because there's about 6 families that are facing this challenge.
This is a big challenge. Yes, I feel your pain. You can, if it depends on how wide the staircases are as to whether you can get a chairlift put in. Another option is to create the first floor entry space as your main living space and somehow convert that half bath into a full bath so that you can live there. You can still go upstairs if you need to, but you don't have to. You can live on one floor. Is the ideal solution. Townhouses are a real challenge because they usually either have steep steps getting into the townhouse or once you're inside, they have steps to go up. But if you can create a living space that's safe on the primary level as you first come in, that's a big plus.
Cheryl, I added, and everybody, I added a link we've done dozens of discussions on safe and accessible homes.
Yes,
We've had a few talking about the stair glides and this, that, and the other. But one of the things that in our discussions that we've had, and sort of Deb, you kind of alluded to it, there may come a time where we all sort of review the physical environment that we're living
exactly.
in and recognize that, man, I love it
I
here. I
can't
had
do it.
great
Yeah,
memories here, but
yeah.
now I need to figure out where to go. And,
Mhm.
Cheryl, one of the things that's popping in my mind is you got 6 families in your community. You
Yeah.
all seem to get along a little bit. There might be a couple of little Golden Girl
Oh,
opportunities
yeah.
there, just thinking outside
I'm
the
a big Golden Girls fan. I think that's a great solution. And you can have like a college student rent a room and do the chores for you and help you with groceries and things like that. So there are options to bring in extra income as well as have stuff taken care of for you.
Now, Deb, another thing that I want to throw out here related to Cheryl's question, and I know you're a real estate professional, and one of the things that you shared in your personal story is you actually rented a couple of times. And
Yes.
that may be against the guidance that people think that a realtor would offer,
Uh-huh.
but personally, I'm a big fan of renting because it enables you to see
Oh,
if you can
absolutely.
get
You
along.
you need to unbundle the process, I call it. Get rid of getting rid of the home is enough of a chore. I mean, you have to get rid of years of collections of stuff, sell the home, get it ready, and then you have to find a place to rent where you can think clearly. And I always recommend if you rent, it gives you an opportunity to travel to the place you're interested in looking at and staying there for at least a month if you can, because you're going to like it or love it. You're going to like it or hate it. And it gives you an opportunity. But then when you come home to the rental, you say, okay, I don't have to worry about, mowing the lawn and all that stuff. And it's just unbundle the process. Don't think about it as one whole thing. Where am I going to go? Well, don't get rid of the house first and then rent for a while because that gives you the opportunity to take your time. I don't like people making rash decisions right away. And
Well,
I tell widows and widowers, don't sell the house right away. You need time to grieve and go through things. This is not always a good thing.
and one of the folks that was on one of our solo aging discussions, she made a move to Florida thinking this is the place for me, and bought a home and realized she didn't really care for
Right,
the Florida climate and what have
right.
you.
Yeah.
And she was calling me, wanting to get back to the mid-Atlantic and this, that, and the other. And I said, you know what? You wouldn't be calling me if you had just moved down there and rented for a year.
Yeah.
You'd just the reason she was calling me is, should I sell
How do
my
I get out
home?
of this?
How
Yeah.
do I sell
Yeah.
my home? But if
Hmm.
she had gone down there, rented for a year, oh, this is not for me. Her lease is up. Boom, she's back
I
in
think that
Mid-Atlantic.
even rent in the new place, just because, do you like snow a whole lot or do you want to live, the South is very different weather, temperature wise. I sometimes will tell people in Arizona, they don't want to leave Arizona. I say, well, good, buy a house that's in the mountains up near Flagstaff and then live in the South during the winter and live up there in the summer. And you've got the mountains and you got the best of both worlds and you don't have to get another driver's license.
Okay. Now, one of the other tips that you talk about in the book, and when I've heard you on podcasts and stuff, is don't be afraid to be on your own. Like,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
can you share some tips that might be helpful to folks?
Well, I think with my situation, my husband was in charge of a lot of different aspects, and I was in charge of certain aspects. And so when he passed, I realized, oh my gosh, I have to do my own taxes. And, so fortunately, I have a wonderful CPA who has guided us through the years, and she said that my husband had told her before he passed, now please take good care of Deb. She does not know how to do this kind of stuff. And I said, but there's no reason I should have to. I can hire someone, but don't be afraid to step out. You're going to feel like everybody's looking at you. They're not looking at you. They're talking on their phones and eating dinner and, it's totally different than what you think it is. And take a small weekend trip by yourself. You'd be amazed at how much fun you have. Nobody's telling you, well, can I eat now? Did you bring the such and such? No, you can just do it on your own. But don't be afraid to step out and do it in little bits and bites. And pretty soon, I mean, I just got back from a 2-week trip to the national parks and I was hiking around and Mount Zion and Bryce and all around, and I had a great time. And
And
I like to travel solo.
yeah, and I'm going to drop into chat a discussion that we did with the folks at Road Scholar on
Yes,
solo travel, and we had a woman that was on there. You remind me of her because she said, when my husband was alive, I would cater all of our travel to him,
right.
and I and I realize now I wasn't going and doing what I wanted to do.
What
I
you
just
wanted to do.
wanted to
Yeah,
make sure that he was happy.
yeah.
And it took a lot of bravery, but she said the cool thing was they have solo travel trips with Road
Oh, yeah.
Scholar.
I mean, Norwegian Cruise Lines has an entire section for solo travelers. I
Yeah.
mean, that you think that nobody's going to be there, but you'd be surprised. I made a lot of new friends. It's fun, and there's a lot of Facebook pages too that cater to solo agers, solo travelers, people living by themselves, homebodies or whatever,
Yeah.
and they're out there. You just have to go look for them. But you're not the only one.
No, no, that yeah. Now you kind of alluded to it with your story about your CPA, but I know one of the things in the book and something that you promote a lot of is asking, not being afraid to ask for help.
Right.
Um, and I believe you're another advocate like myself for aging life care managers.
Oh, I love them.
So
I cannot say enough good stuff about aging life care managers. They are absolutely awesome. I've worked with several of them over the years and they're really good. Well, they're good all the time, but they're really good. Let's say you live here and your family lives in Ohio. Well, you can hire a life care manager there to check on them, set up a plan, help with all kinds of things to ease your stress. And it just they know who the good places are and the not so good places and how to get your name at the top of the list. You don't want to be on a wait list if you need something right now. And I can't say enough good stuff about them. They're just awesome people.
that's great. Now, um, I know you've got in the book, well, and actually, let me share this section of the book. I was just scrolling through it. Um, this is one of the things that I like, and I think we need more of things like this. Is right now I'm in the chapter that talks about how to choose an assisted living that meets your loved one's needs. And the one of the things that you've got here, are these list of questions that folks could ask.
Yeah, and
And
you don't think to ask those questions. You're only listening to what the marketing person is telling you. These are things that you need to be evaluating so that you can be a better advocate for your loved one.
yeah, and some of the things are not necessarily questions. It's sort of like
Check
um
things to check
like
on.
I love this one here. Are you allowed to talk with residents about how they like the community and the staff? And let's be frank here. Um, we realize there are some communities that will
Yeah.
discourage you from talking to the residents, right?
Oh, absolutely. And why? And you first thing you should ask is, well, why won't they let me talk to them? What's the reason? So, but you wouldn't necessarily think about to even ask that question when you go in. But I think I spent 3 or 4 pages just unloading things that you should think about, just to make you a better advocate for your loved one.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's
Um,
all about. You're now becoming the parent to your parent, possibly, and you want to do what's right. And you have siblings telling you what they think you should do, and you're the one in charge, and you've got to do it. And you make the best decision. It may not always be the ideal situation, but you are armed with information to help you make better decisions.
Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, you've got literally hundreds of questions
Oh,
when it attached to every different level of care, whether it be life plan or assisted living. That's pretty amazing. Okay, so now I know in the book, one of the things that you explore is what happens if we or somebody gets dementia, or you're caring for somebody. Um, what are some things, how can we kind of navigate through life with this hanging out there? Or what do we do if it suddenly hits us, with the left hook?
you mean dementia or getting
Or I
older
guess
or
any sort of thing that takes us out of living independently
yeah,
to now needing to depend on others to.
others. Yeah. I always try to tell people learn as much as you can about what is out there. What are your options for the loved one? And if you're a loved one aging by yourself, you need to find a trusted person. I mean, I've had a lot of people who have had their bank be the trustee for their life, and I've sold a lot of their properties for them. But you need someone that you can trust, even if it's just one person, to be on hand, preferably younger than you are. So you don't you can if they can don't outlive you, but they do outlive you, sorry. You need to think what would happen to me if, and what are my options. And if you can talk to people and you can do research on the internet and find out what the options are. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of living choices for the active adult. And then you're limited as to if you need a memory care facility, you're limited to your location. I mean, if you're in a remote area, you may not have the options that someone living in a larger area would have, but you have to do your research and find out, how much does it cost? The Genworth website is a wonderful resource to call up on and find out what costs are in your particular area. You can just put your zip code in and get an idea. Now, granted, if you live another 5 years, the prices are going to go up, but at least you can find out how much do I need to set aside? What do I need to do? And aging life care managers can help you with this too, because they know all the inside track on these places, and they can tell you who has a wait list. If it has a wait list, in a way, that's a good sign, because that means the facility is really good and people want to get in there. I had a woman once who had her name on 5 different aging life care facilities, and she said, "I just want to be sure I'm in the right one." And so she put her name on all 5 of them in the area, and she said, "I'll go whichever one comes first."
Yeah.
So the thing
And a
is
lot
doing
of,
the research. Don't wait until the last minute, because that's not the time to do it.
yeah. And you mentioned the Genworth site, which I dropped into chat, but folks, just again, this is, it's good data. It's a good,
A
gives you
good starting place.
good
Yeah,
starting point. But what Deb was talking about is when you get to the site, you can research cost of cares. You put you get your thing, you see this is the whole country. So like I'm in Reston, Virginia, but you can type in any zip
zip
code
code, whatever.
that you
Yeah.
like.
And
But
this gives you an opportunity to check other places. If you're thinking of moving to, Texas or North Carolina or wherever, you can check it out first and do your research, do your homework.
And then I think this is also, so folks, you can see, and this is not necessarily that accurate. It's got a general rule of
It's a
thumb.
ballpark.
Yeah. And this is pretty good. It's probably a little on the low side if I said that anything. But what I think is pretty scary is like, look what
Yeah,
they're saying. Assisted living in the Washington area is $7,000 a month right now. Now I can do 30 years from now,
right.
and holy cow, that's $17,000 a month. And this is one of these things that we need to
That's why I don't want you to wait till the last minute. You need to think about it and make decisions. They may change. Your decision may change, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But the thing is you're getting the information you need so that you're not caught short.
Yep. Okay. Um, let's see. I'm looking at the clock here, and I always like to have our guests, like I've thrown out a bunch of questions, our audience has thrown out a bunch of questions. We talked about a bunch of stuff, Deb. What are some other topics that you want to make sure that the world knows about, or things that we could engage our audience in conversation around?
Hmm. Well, there's a number. I covered everything from start to finish, and I deal a lot with the grief process because the sibling rivalry, mom always liked you best concept, you have to resolve the issues with your loved one, plus your siblings, if you have siblings, and they're aging too. So to me, the emotions are what enters into a lot of what your decisions are, because you may want your loved one to do a certain thing, but they don't want to. So how do you make that happen? And just remember, you have to have patience. This is not going to happen overnight, but you need to start thinking about it. And please get the information from them that you need to settle their estate afterwards. Make sure they have the power of attorney for you to act on their behalf. And then you're the executor or the trustee of the estate afterwards. But what do you do with all the things? Are there certain things that they wanted to have go to a family member? Get that information ahead of time, because there's no do-over after death or dementia. You can't go back and ask them for things. And getting along with the siblings and the grieving process, it's okay to grieve. You've been through a lot, and give yourself a pat on the back if you live through this and survive it. I just helped a woman who had to sell the family home after many years, and she has to divide the proceeds up between her deceased brother's heirs and her other brother, who is a special needs person. And she has been through an amazing time, but she just handled it beautifully. And I gave her the resources that she needed, and she just was fabulous. She was fabulous to work with because she knew she had to do it. But if you argue all the time with your siblings or with your parents, you're not going to get anything done. So listen to your loved one. What are they afraid of? What do they fear? And let's find a solution for that. But that's so important. And getting the information is very important.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up this challenges with siblings, because if you find that there's a dynamic out there, that's a great time to have an aging life care manager come in. Um, they can oftentimes be sort of the objective
Mediator.
body
Yeah,
in the
a mediator.
room.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I'm going to drop into chat is that a lot of people aren't familiar with is the profession of elder care mediation.
Yes.
And these are, if you're at odds or you see your kids are at odds with each other, you can hire a mediator who sort of
Absolutely.
listens to everybody and and deciphers,
And
what's
you may
up.
not get an answer, you may not have a resolution right away, but at least you've started the conversation. Because I've been in where I've done properties where I get accosted by the heir because they were never allowed to say goodbye to the house.
Hmm.
So if you let them say goodbye, and people will, I like it when I can have people come together as the family and have their memories. They're sitting in a circle or whatever, and they go through each room of the house. Oh, remember the Christmas when you did this or whatever. And it's talking and communicating and just not getting angry because nothing's going to change. You can't undo the past, but try to resolve it because your loved one wants to know that they passed away in good with leaving things behind. And of course, some people just won't do it. So, and
Yep.
that's okay, but you may regret it later, but
Yep.
it is
And
what.
what I love to do or love to recommend when people gather at the family home before it's sold and
Exactly.
the furniture's
Yeah,
moved is record everything on video and
absolutely.
talk about the dining room table and what that meant to
Absolutely.
you and this, that, and the other.
Um,
And I realize now I kind of cut you off earlier when you were talking about your journey and going from the large home to the apartment. Um, and I see that you've got like decluttering decisions simplified with a
mhm.
two-page insert. What are some tips that you give to that you experience firsthand with downsizing, but that you give to the families that you're helping
Oh,
downsize?
they ask me so many questions about, well, what do I do about my mother's Hummel figures? And I'm saying, okay, you have to be gentle, but I can tell you, I get in the middle of everybody. And I think of one in particular that was particularly, I just said, how am I going to solve this? Four sisters. And the mother had this tea set, sterling silver tea set. And every Christmas and holiday, she would get it out and she would serve tea and teach the girls, etiquette and stuff like that. Well, when she passed, they got into an argument about who gets the tea set. And I said, here's what we're going to do. You take it for 3 months and then you ship it to your sister and she'll take it for 3 months and on until the year is up. By the time the year was up, they all hated it because they didn't want to have to polish it. And I said, why don't you sell it, melt it down and go on a cruise with the money? And they resolved, but when they were at each other's throats. So it is what it is. But I did another one where I had the gentleman, he was a widower, and his children, he had to move, and I went through the house to take pictures and stuff, and they said, could you find out if he would talk about the items that are left behind, the antiques? So I videoed him talking about it, and I sent the video to them, and they said, we've always wondered the history behind the rocking chair. And some things are easy to solve, and then other things are deep seated, but I think it's wonderful to sit in the room and talk about what you have left and the memories that you have, the good or bad, because you can resolve a lot of conflict that way.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense because
Right.
this is where what I find is that if you look at all of our scrapbooks and you look at things like that, we're always taking pictures of the soccer game, us sitting around the dining room table,
Right.
but we don't think about talking about the dining room table. But
Exactly.
then when it comes to give up the dining room table, whoa, I can't
Well,
do that. But
but a lot of times they don't want the dining room table because they either have one already or they don't eat that way. They sit at the counter in the kitchen. But the thing is, you're talking about the items and taking pictures of the items and putting them in a scrapbook kind of situation is also good. But quite frankly, if the photo doesn't have it written on the back who's in it, toss it because
yeah,
you're not going to know. And why keep something that you have no idea what's on the picture?
yeah, a
So
lot of it's just guilt, and it's just
yeah.
very hard to
The
to let
emotional
go.
part, I think, of
Yeah.
the whole transaction is the emotions. And to me, that's the hardest part.
You
Letting go.
know, I'm because you're a real estate professional and because this topic is often one of debate, and I see that you've got a chapter in your book on this. I'd love to hear your comments on selling a home as is
Mhm.
versus sort of upgrading and staging it and doing that.
It,
Like how do you help people figure out what's best?
I look and see what work has to be done and how long have deferred maintenance issues been gathering, accumulating. And I just finished one where she talked to four realtors, and I was the only one that came in, and I said, don't do anything. Let me deep clean and we'll sell it as is. And of course, two investors got head to head, and I got her over 50,000 more than the list price. But another realtor had told her, oh no, you have to put $30,000 into it and do this and that. I said, you're not going to ever get that back. It's like putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
But if you've maintained your home well over the years, chances are maybe a touch of paint or just cleaning and getting rid of the clutter is all you need to do. And pricing it. Pricing, preparation, pricing, and presentation are the three P's that I follow. But you don't have to sell it as is, but you can. You just won't get as much because the dollars that you put in to make improvements will come back to you. But if you don't make the improvements, the buyer has to do it. And so you adjust the price accordingly. But I
Okay.
sold the house in 48 hours and she got 50,000 more and she was happy because she didn't have to do anything. But there are
Yeah.
things, but at least get rid of the clutter. You're not, it's not going to go with you, and get rid of it and clean. Deep cleaning can work wonders. And,
Man.
mild staging may have to be, if you have a tattered recliner, let's maybe think about maybe buying you a new one.
Wow. Well, I got to tell you, this has been great.
Oh, I'm glad.
And I've known you for years, but I feel like I'm introducing a friend to a
Yeah,
bunch of my other friends, the positive aging community. And
that's right.
this has really been very thought provoking. I'm going to make sure to drop the link to the book into chat. And then I'm also on the recording link. I'm going to put Debbie's, what is it okay to share your
Well,
email with folks?
we just merged, we just became an affiliate with the Corcoran Group 2 days ago. So if you could please use the correct, it's Debbie, Debbie .Miller, Miller, at Corcoran Group, Corcoran group.com. So it's Debbie.Miller at corcorangroup.com is
Okay,
the new official email address, and I'm still changing things over, but
I'll make sure to put that in
thank you.
at the recording link. And
Thank you.
this has been wonderful. And
Well,
folks,
I appreciate your having me. It's cathartic for me because I'm taking 30 years of everything I've learned and I'm dumping it on a piece of paper and putting it out there for other people. The
yeah,
main thing is to get people to think about it.
to think, to have conversations, and the thing that I love that you've said, and like I said, I've had a lot of solo aging conversation here,
Yeah,
but I loved how you talked about going to the movie by yourself and then
sure.
going out to eat, and how that wasn't easy, but now you've
I do it
embraced
without
it.
even thinking. I
Yeah,
mean, I go to one particular restaurant after I get my hair done, and the bartender sees me because I always sit at the bar because I have wonderful conversations with the other people at the bar, and nobody's going to bite you. And there are other solo agers at the bar. Trust
yep,
me, they're out there. And she sees me coming, says, Debbie, do you want your usual? Oh yeah, let's do that. So you have a friend and you develop new friends and you explore new places. There's a whole world out there to see.
I love
So
it.
do it.
Man, no, great
Just do it.
feedback. And this is going to be this is really good. And folks, this is it. We're taking a little Thanksgiving break, and I just, I'm going to miss you. I really am. I love these discussions and hearing the questions and everything. But we'll see you in early December, and you all know you can reach out to me anytime. You got all my contact info if you got an invite to this. So,
And I want to tell you, Steve, just from the bottom of my heart, I've known you 30 some years, and I think of all the good that you have done for everybody. It makes me cry.
oh man, you made me cry too. Here we're crying together. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, y'all.
Thank you
Thanks,
for having
thanks,
me.
Deb, and everybody have a great